Today I do the unthinkable and review a Peter Lorre movie in which I don't try to imitate him. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today is Throwback Thursday, and I am taking a look at the 1963 Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, and Jack Nicholson movie, The Raven. Why did I pick this one? Well, there's a saying around my house, Vincent Price don't need no reason. I happen to just really love him, and when I think of classic horror films and creature features and things of that ilk, two real names come to mind. First off, Vincent Price and Roger Corman, and here we have them combined. Roger Corman, if you aren't aware of this, if you're a youngin' watching this, he's a director that was renowned for pumping out as many movies as he could, as fast as he could, for as low budget of studio picture as he could. And he has something like 50 some odd directorial credits to his name, almost all of which taking place between 1955 and 1968. Pretty remarkable, all told. And this is one that he directed, and it has all those actors that I mentioned in it. Jack Nicholson in a very young role. And ultimately, while not being the best movie in the world, it is a lot of fun, and it is a great classic. But to get into more details on that, let's get into the categories. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points, for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one, I gave a 10 out of 25. I mean, I will be reviewing this, and I do hold it in my heart of hearts as a great classic, but that doesn't mean that on a technical level, comparing it on an equal scoring footing, that it's going to stand toe-to-toe with admittedly more excellent films. And yes, the plot, I gave 10 out of 25. It was pretty darn flimsy. This is basically taking place within the wizarding world, in which wizards are sitting atop in their castles and practicing their magic, and it's all very spooky laboratory, very kid-friendly haunted house kind of, dead man's hair going into the potion, oh dear, kind of just hammy, old horror movie kind of thing. It really embraces it and leans into it. And we're introduced to the character of Dr. Erasmus, played by Vincent Price, and he is visited upon by a raven, and this has a very loose association with the poem by Edgar Allan Poe, and it really is kind of just somehow shoehorned in. But he is visited by a raven that turns out to be another wizard that was cursed, and when he sets him back to being a human, we are introduced to the Peter Lorre character of Dr. Bedloe. And he explains that he was turned into a raven by Dr. Scarabeus, played by Boris Karloff, and from finding a portrait of Lenore and saying, hey, I actually saw Lenore at Dr. Scarabeus's place. And they're like, okay, well, off we go. We're going to go try and track down Lenore, who Vincent Price thought was dead years prior and is the love of his life. So upon word of hearing that she might be alive, they decide to go to Dr. Scarabeus and confront him. And a lot of backstabbing and maniacal mwahahahas happen, and ultimately leading to a wizardy showdown, the likes of which we won't see again until Harry Potter goes up against Voldemort. It really is quite spectacularly schlocky, but it is fun. And but if I'm just reviewing it on a written plot, how well things are fleshed out, how well characters are developed, it honestly, even 10 is probably being a little bit generous, but I'm going to leave it at that. The Intent, I gave a 22 out of 25. The Intent is really where this movie is going to shine. It was entertaining. It was fun. It was schlocky. And the intention of Roger Corman even making it, and the studio even making it, it did make money. This was done for between $200,000 to $350,000, depending on what reports you want to believe. And it made well over $1 million. And I mean, that was kind of the name of the game. When you had these, pulp kind of theaters come up, and they had the weekly creature features, and the giant ants and giant scorpions and so forth invading screens, and kids were paying their allowance money to watch them every Friday night. That was the name of the game, is get these movies out there, get them in, get them out, move on to the next one, and just churn away at them. And for a movie such as this to make over $1 million was quite something, and they really did a great job with that. I mean, coming in that under budget with these name brand actors was really remarkable. Yeah, I mean, what it set out to do, I think it achieved. I absolutely do think that this was, not just making money, because, yes, that may have been ultimately the point of it from the studio and Roger Corman's perspective. But from a movie maker's perspective, I think you always want it to be entertaining and accessible and, tell a good story. And although the story wasn't magnificently well, nuanced, it was fun. And I think that came through. I always had a lot of fun watching this one. The acting, I gave a 15 out of 25. I'm not going to say that everybody had really great performances in this one, but I will say that of the actors that were in it, by this time, they had all found their niche. I mean, Boris Karloff, this was a movie that he did after a pretty long stretch of not doing films anymore. And I'm not going to say that his glory years were behind him, but he still had talent. That's not an insult, but definitely the bulk of his movies were preceding this one. But I would say that everybody in this movie had their own shtick. Peter Lorre, certainly. Vincent Price, certainly. And everybody was at their maniacal best in this film, except for Jack Nicholson, who at this point was young enough and early enough in his acting career that he had not quite found his maniacal voice yet. So it's actually interesting watching everybody in the movie completely chew up every scene except for Jack Nicholson, who plays it pretty low-key and straight. Every once in a while, you can kind of hear it in his voice. There's something there, and it's ready to come out in future films. But it's interesting watching this low-key version of him just go through his lines as kind of the young hero sort of role there. The technical, I gave a 7 out of 25. The set design, the colors, the camera work, they were actually all pretty darn good. But the practical effects were so laughably bad in this movie that it really added to the cheesy nature of it. But I really can't give it a whole lot of points when you have a wizarding duel where they're basically just waving their hands in the air and throwing cartoons around, a cartoon ball, a cartoon lightning bolt, cartoon spear. It's just laughably bad, and I really can't give it a whole lot of technical points for that. So yeah, 7 out of 25 there, which gives us a total of 54 out of 100 points. I would absolutely recommend this movie, but only if you are in the mood for a hammy classic, while watching veteran actors that are just completely devouring every scene that they are in, to the absolute utmost of their character profiles. And on that level, it would absolutely be worth watching. If you are a Vincent Price fan, if you are a Peter Lorre fan, or if you're a Boris Karloff fan, or a Jack Nicholson fan, it is absolutely worth watching, and I think it's almost required watching at that level. There were some really great moments in it, and watching them play off of each other with these eccentric characters that they have built up over the entirety of their careers, and then just watching them bounce off of each other with a lot of improv dialogue, it was really, really something to watch. And on that basis, I would absolutely recommend watching the 1963 Roger Corman version of The Raven. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.